Welcome everybody to the Captain's Quarters Intercom. It's been a minute since I've been interviewing people and stuff, and I guess I kind of put it on the back burner for a little bit and grown my CQ MedCorp's account out a little bit. But today we have on here Christian. Christian, me and him have been talking about all these different breathing techniques. He has a wealth of knowledge that I haven't even heard about. Really new to everything he's talking about on his page. I highly recommend everybody follow him, of course, just as much as everybody that comes on here. But seriously, I've every single story that I upload. A lot of people know me from my Q and A's and stuff like that. Going and sharing what I believe, my beliefs on certain health topics and stuff. And Christian here has been messaging me all these inputs and has been teaching me ever so slightly. And today I hope to learn a really huge wealth of knowledge from him. And I just want to start off and get to know you a little bit here. But so where are you coming from?
I am actually a son of immigrants. My parents from Argentina and migrated here after they got married at a young age and fell in love with the United States of America. I had 7 kids. I was the middle child, and my dad was really into soccer. So growing up, all of my siblings, we all got into sports at a really young age. And I fell in love with playing soccer and all sports in general. So throughout my whole life, I was involved in sports, predominantly soccer and football. And, life has its crazy paths that you take. And my path went from football to competitive cheerleading. And most people probably don't know much about it, but it is and has been the fastest growing sport in the world over the last 20 years. So I started that in 1998. I was getting into my senior year of high school, and it was just kind of a little bit of a whim because I had experienced a shoulder injury playing football, and my hopes of playing college ball got cut short. So I was kind of convinced to just try cheerleading and you can get a full scholarship. And that's what got my attention. So I went and jumped into it head first, trying to get college scholarship. And and then it just took me on a wild journey. So I got a full ride scholarship after my senior year in high school to one of the top junior college teams. So if you've ever been on Netflix and you've heard of the documentary called Cheer, I was part of the rival team to Navarro Junior College, and that's Trinity Valley Community College. So I cheered there my freshman year in college on a full ride scholarship. And then I'm actually from Houston, Texas. So I actually went back home to Houston, and my original coach, my first all-star cheerleading coach, took on the head coaching job at University of Houston. So he offered me a full ride scholarship and also a job coaching at his gym. And I just really enjoyed coaching. I think coaching just kind of became natural to me. I remember being in first grade, and I was teaching the kindergartners how to jump rope while all my friends were playing at recess. And I kind of knew then that coaching was just something that would be with me for my entire journey. So moving forward, I spent five and a half years competing in college, and through that time, I was also part of an all-star competitive team, which would compete at the national level. And then from there, we began growing the cheerleading sport, and we began the first USA national team. So I was a member of that first USA national team, and now it's grown so fast, and it's gotten to the point where just a few years ago it was accepted in the Olympic International Committee as a new sport, new up and coming sport. So That was really cool to be a pioneer for the competitive cheerleading sport, moving into the Olympic arena. But through my competitive career, um, I was very competitive, and I like to be the best that I could be. So I was really fortunate to be around some of the best coaches, some of the best athletes in the world that really inspired me and helped motivate me to just be, the best that I could be. So through that journey, I found myself training with some of the best athletes in the world, and I kind of set the bar for tumbling. So gymnastics tumbling. This was 2003. I became the first athlete in the world to compete standing double full, which is one backflip with two twists. Um, Never been done before in cheerleading and or even in gymnastics at any level. Um, and the group of people that inspired me to do that, we kind of changed a little bit of the trajectory of competitive cheerleading, and really upped the bar in the tumbling aspect. And over the next couple of years, it just kind of exploded. People were, trying the hardest new tricks that had never been done before, and we kind of continued the next few years and pioneered and really took it to a different level. And so along with that, the next couple of years, I went ahead and just kept pushing myself to see how far I could go, and became the first to tumble out of a standing double full, then became the first to do a standing whip double full, then became the first to tumble out of that. So it just kind of like kept going and going and going. And um, through that experience, I was competing for 15 years straight, consecutive years at the national level, the highest level of competitive cheerleading, and experienced lots of wear and tear on my body. But in college, I was very interested, like I said, in coaching. So I went into doing kinesiology. And my first year in college, took a nutrition class.
Go
Was
into that. Go into that. I'm going to stop you. Get into
yeah.
kinesiology. What the heck is that?
So it's basically the study of the human body. So it's just the study of the movement of the human body, and other fields that come from that, physical therapy, sports performance. There's been other um, different degrees that have grown out of that. And so that was kind of the only thing that really interested me in college. And I was very different from your average college student. I was going to college on full ride scholarships, but because I was interested in competing and just performing, and where other people were like very serious about their academics, I was just like, I'll just do kinesiology. It's really the only thing that interests me, sports and coaching. And so I didn't take the school aspect of it as serious as, most people would, but I did learn many things. And nutrition was something that sparked my interest just about 2001. And I did become, awakened to certain things. And I feel like over the years, I had like different awakening moments to certain things that came to, the human body and how to be a better performer as an athlete, and how to, have more energy, how to train better, and agility and speed, and then recovery and things like that. I was always researching and trying to find ways to improve. But so through that experience led me to, um, like I said, being a part of some of the best teams in the world. I was very fortunate to be a part of four gold medal winning teams over that 15-year span, multiple national championships. Um, and then also I coached. So I did open my own gym, and I coached for about 8 years. And then towards the end of that 8 years, there was a lot of people in the international market where it started growing really fast that were seeking education and training. And so I was being brought to countries all over the world to share my knowledge and train and speak at coaches conferences and judge cheerleading competitions. And so through that experience, it just, again, another level of awakening and opening my eyes to different, different cultures and different types of eating and different types of training and meeting people in different arenas. And it really was just a really awesome opportunity for me to learn and grow as a human, as an individual, and to be sharing my passion for coaching people to be better, and also my passion for competitive cheerleading. So long journey, did experienced a lot, learned a lot of really cool things, was able to train many countries that, before they had ever even attended world championships. I was able to work with them, help them get to the world championships. And then over the last 5 years, many countries that I worked with have since then won different championships in their respective categories. So it was really cool to be able to see the work that I did years ago, the seeds that I planted years ago, to kind of grow and become, other people's dreams come true. So, but what led me to where I am now, in terms of life coaching and helping people become the healthiest version of themselves and win and be champions at life, as well as sports, if they're interested in sports or just fitness in general, was a very serious health scare. So my last year competing, I actually went ahead and brought some of my gold medals here. You guys can see it's pretty cool. My last
Yeah,
year to
hold that up.
compete,
Yeah. Oh wow.
my last that was 2013. Um, got some rings there, world championship rings. But my last year to compete, I was 32. Um, my body was pretty broken down, lots of injuries and joint injuries and muscle pains and things like that. Uh, April was my last performance, and the following 6 months were probably the most devastating um, months of my life in terms of health, because it felt like my health just like went on a steep decline.
What was going on?
I wasn't trained. I wasn't training as much, so I wasn't, as physically active as I was, used to being. But I began experiencing um, serious gut issues, um, very severe gut pain, terrible constipation, aches and pains in my joints. I had suffered suffered another injury to my Achilles that had happened in 2008, and it happened again 2 weeks before the national championships. But as a competitive athlete, whenever you're in that level of competitiveness, you just go mind over matter, pain, no gain. You just push through and
Yeah.
deal with it later. So, I pushed through, and fortunately I was able to perform at the best that I could to help my team succeed, and we won the world championships. And so, you know, people will say, it's worth it, and other people, at this point in my life, I'm like, I don't know that it was really that worth it to put my body through that kind of pain. But needless to say, I went through it, and I came out the other end better for it. But um, for 6 months, I was in chronic pain, experiencing many other issues too. But um, there was one health scare that took me to the emergency room, and I felt literally like I was gonna pass out, like almost like I was gonna die. It was pretty intense, and because I had been dealing with this pain where I would have pain after I would eat, I would have pain every night before I went to bed. I would wake up in pain. I would have to sleep 10 to 12 hours every night just to wake up and feel like I could function you know, normal.
Yeah, is this just like gut pains and just like that joint pain you're talking about that was happening
Yeah.
for a while? Yeah, it is pretty
So
stressful.
yeah, and I wasn't able to heal my Achilles injury. Like in the past, I would have injuries, and 2, 3 months later, they would kind of heal themselves, and I would be all right. But this one just kind of kept lingering on, and I was doing lots of international traveling, so I would be, going from Europe, South America, to Canada, to Mexico, and just, when you're traveling like that from country to country, and you're eating different kinds of foods, and you're just, fast paced on the go. It was hard to be consistent with things, and so my nutrition was definitely suffering. And once that health scare hit me, and I went to the emergency room, and I was in excruciating pain, and there was nothing they could do for me. And I'll just backtrack. Before that, I was never a person that liked to take medication. So from when I took my first nutrition class in college, I think at that point I was like, I'm not very big fan of the Western medicine, take a pill for every ill. And so I was already on that bandwagon of, I wouldn't take Advil and things for pain. I just would avoid it at all costs. So when I went to the emergency room, and they're like, "Oh, we don't know what's wrong with you, and there's really nothing we can do for you," and I just decided, I just said in my head that night, I was like, I'm gonna solve this tomorrow. Like, I'm gonna get on this tomorrow, and it's gonna be my only priority to resolve this, so I don't ever have to deal with this pain again. And I think I had mentioned this to you when we first talked, how I came across Joel Wallach's work was just a documentary on YouTube. And I've always just been very into researching and reading research papers and books and articles. And so I came across this 3 hour long documentary, and I started watching it. Joel Wallach was on it. There's probably 10 or 15 other doctors on it. And things just started kind of clicking, making sense. Things that I had learned in nutrition class. This would have been 15 years prior. I started like, oh yeah, yeah. What? Why was I not thinking about this? And then just started piecing it all together. And that very next day, I just immediately went right to work, and it was just like everything else was not a priority. My health became number one priority, and I began a juice cleanse, and I did a 14-day juice cleanse, and by day 12, I was like 90% pain free. And I was just like, almost like this, like, the windshield is foggy and it's raining and it's just like hard to see. That's what it was for 6 months. And then all of a sudden it was like the sun came out, there was no more rain. Windex wiped the windshield clear. It was like I could see clear, I could just smell clear. I just felt so much better. And after 14 days, there was no more pain in my stomach. Um, there was there was no more digestion issues. There was no more constipation. And then I was like, man, I feel amazing. I'm just going to keep going. So I kept going to 21 days. And then after 21 days, like my shoulder pain that I would have was like gone. I was like, wow. It's like, this is unbelievable. And I went all the way to 30 days on a liquid juicing, soups, smoothies, shakes, teas, lots of functionally structured alkaline water, and just it literally just brought life into my body. And after 30 days, every injury that I'd ever experienced in 15 years of competing left my body.
How long did you
Like
say? 30?
30 days, 30
Wow.
days. And there was zero pain. And I think it was about between 21 and 30 days, I was I was sleeping maybe 4 or 5 hours, and I would
Hmm.
just wake up like wide open. There was, none of this like rub my eyes, stretch and wake up. It was just like waking wide awake, and I'm like waking up. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm thinking like, oh. So my lifestyle, just so you know, coaching, we don't start coaching until 3 in the afternoon. So we finish at 9:30, sometimes 10 o'clock at night. So it was kind of like more of like an evening type of a shift. So we would be, this is very common in my industry. So like we're up late, we're like reviewing videos and studying our routines and doing things and planning for our next day. So we're staying up like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. It's just like perfectly normal to be up that late. So if you stay up that late and then you sleep for 8 hours, you're not going to get up till 10. And so that's just kind of how our lifestyle was. And so here I am. I'm going to bed at midnight and waking up at 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning. I'm just like wide awake. I'm like, what's going on? I get up and start doing stuff, start doing more research and doing things. And it was just like life came back into my body, and I was just thriving. Like I was getting so many nutrients. My gut was healed, so I was absorbing nutrients from the food I was eating. I was also switched to like pure organic foods. Like I stopped all the packaged and the processed and the fried, and just like I cut so much out. And it just like gave my body everything it needed. And that's why, like, when I saw the work that you were doing, I was just like, this is awesome. Like, so many people need this right now, and you're out there spreading this knowledge and helping people. And all I could ever think about was like, when I was going to bed in pain, I would cry myself to sleep some nights in so much pain. I would hope that I didn't wake up. There was many nights that I just was just like, oh God, I can't deal with this anymore. There's nothing I can do
Was it
to
what kind
fix
of
it.
pain? Like, was it just sharp, intense pain? Because there's all sorts of.
Yeah, right. So it was like a dagger right up here and to the left of my belly button. Just I would eat and it would just start. Somebody's just pushing a knife into my gut and turning it, and it was just intense pain, and then constipation. 2, 3 days later. I mean, I wasn't eliminating, consistently, and then that was just causing more, joint pain and muscle pain and fatigue and muddled thinking, and um, it was just brought more stress. So
I feel like you really just can't live a life traveling around the world and like doing that all the time unless you do have some like professional cook or chef like following you around all the time. But really, it's hard to have a consistent diet on the road or some like you know I'm just pulling Wallach into this because he is kind of an example. He was gaining, like some people tell I'd be like, so this guy's talking about nutrition, but he's overweight, he's bald, but what's going on here? But Wallach, when he was traveling around all the time, he'd be eating like crap food, but he'd be eating the without the bad foods. But he'd be going to like McDonald's and stuff, and he'd be eating a lot more because of just the more performance and all that stuff.
right.
But yeah, that's a big question that I got to, and Wallach, he's been doing this stuff for a bit, and back in the day he was a little bit heavier, but yeah, he has a big, huge story. But it's nice to hear that from you because I haven't really traveled so much myself, and I've traveled one time across the. I went to go see Ryan Alexander. I don't know if you know who he is, but he runs the Wallach's Warriors account.
Okay.
Yeah, and so he lives in like Kirkland Lake, Ontario. I'm in Duluth, Minnesota. It's about a 14-hour drive, and I made it about 12 hours because uh, Ontario's speed limit is like 55 up there. It's like it should be like 80 or something, but I got there and Ryan's like, you're like speeding. I mean, like you're probably racing down here, like what they classify as that. But like on the road, I was just eating fruit and I had my 90 essential nutrients, of course, had that, but it still did take a pretty big toll on me. I got to Ryan's, and for about the first couple of days, I had just this weird illness just around, and um, diatomaceous earth. I took that as soon as Ryan recommended me to take it. I didn't think about it, but it just immediately relieved a lot of what was going on in my digestion. And I'm not able to stay on diatomaceous earth for a while because a lot of people recommend it for people that have digestion problems. They'll recommend it for at least like a month or something with a heavy dose. That's what we recommend. But if I do it, I get bad constipation, and I'm not sure if it's just because if I have a bug and I have to get rid of the bug or whatever. But I have had this weird digestion problem for quite a little bit of a time. I feel like for, I mean, 20 years of my life, I was so just, um, well, I'm 21 years old, and for 20 years, I wasn't eating without the 12 bad foods diet or without the bad foods. I was pretty celiac, pretty IBS or whatever you would want to call it. I don't really know what it was. I wasn't diagnosed with anything, but
Same here.
I figured I had a very bad gut problem. I went to the doctor, and they probably took maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes, not even. I remember one of the doctors just coming up to my ear and trying to put a ear swab down like one of those Q-tips. I'm like, don't you know? Like, it's one of those apprentices, that they're just getting on training and stuff. I'm like, what's going on here? I mean, you guys losing your marbles? I mean, this guy, I haven't even met your name. Who are you? Or have you washed your hands? What's going on? And likely he didn't wash his hands because I mean, a lot of doctors just don't, but it's disgusting. And so I went in for a gut problem, and I didn't really look at what I ate. They didn't look at my exercise or anything. Not that has much to do with digestion itself, but they didn't look at anything. It was just weird, and they're just they're like, oh, so you might be sensitive to gluten. You might be, but we're gonna get you started on this antidepressant, Boostbrone, it's called, and we're gonna have you take that for a couple of weeks and then go back. And I got the prescription. I was told by my parents, obviously, because my parents are just, they're supportive of me and stuff. So that's what they're trying to do. They're just encouraging me to take this. And I'm just like, no, I don't feel like, this is the right path. And so I kind of just took it, all this, all the problems that I was getting, and I had to just listen to my body. And I'm sure that's the same way with you. I mean, that's what the pain is signifying. It's like stop using me, or it's like it's one of those signals of. But I just had a bunch of bloating issues, tons of random gut. I mean, if I could list all the symptoms, it'd take an hour, but I
Same
had
here.
I had bad, I mean, anxiety, timidness, shy personality. I mean, for most of my life, for as long as I can remember, until I had met or got relieved from the whole Wallach's Warriors page, honestly. And I mean, I hate to skip in advance so much, but after that experience with the doctor, I didn't trust that Western medicine whatsoever. And being me into conspiracies and whatnot in the world, I just don't trust the government as well. So I was lost for a while. I was really lost in where to go for health, where to even start. I mean, there's so many different controversies out there. Salt good, salt bad, and is cholesterol good for you, or what's going on?
Right.
Um, and then the gut realm. I mean, they just talk about probiotics and fiber and hydration. They don't get too much into the problematic foods. What could be going on here? But I eventually stumbled on Wallach's Warriors by just digging through different Instagram pages. It was through Project Knowledge. It was a big, it's still around. It's a big Instagram conspiracy page. And I was originally into just unbiased stuff in the beginning. I wasn't really necessarily looking for conspiracy material, or just like, I wanted to get to the truth of things. And so like, that's, I guess, in my truth journey, I would never consider myself to be a health coach whatsoever. I never wanted to be in that realm or anything. I got involved with all of the stuff when I applied the protocols I seen in Ryan's Q&A, daily Q&A does like what I do. Um, but he gave a IBS protocol. I thought I had IBS, so I went for that. And within probably a month, I mean, all of the bad intestinal problems and gut problems really were alleviated. I mean, more than anything else in my life, before I was taking chalk, uh, supplements, all the Shilajit, CMOS. I had a little bit of a maybe a cognitive improvement just because I'm actually getting some minerals from my food,
Right.
but I was on all six of the products. I was taking them all. Very little testimony with that, and I spent a lot of money. Obviously, I would do anything to get rid of my pain, but ran across walks where he's telling me to quit gluten, quit these bad foods that aren't meant for the human body. Okay, I'm done. I went to organic before this. Yeah, sign me up. I immediately went on the protocol, and I thought Beyond Tangy Tangerine was the 90 essential nutrients, but for like about the first month or so, and I wasn't getting so much of a benefit. But then I started to really apply everything and got the bone and joint nutrients as well in the OsteoFX product, and I within probably a week, I had this one weird back pain, and largely due to just bad posture, but it went away within the first week. I remember the pain turned into somewhat of a phantom pain, and I was at work, after every day at work, I would have that just pain. I'd have to, I mean, go home. The pain was so bad, I'd have to smoke weed to get rid of, just to actually alleviate something, And after a week, that's just crazy. How much nutrition, just how much abuse your body can go through that much amount of time and actually recover in like 3 months, not 100%, but like it can, your body can regrow like 90,
Traumatic.
yeah, like 95% of its liver back. It's crazy. Just with the power of your body, like we promote the body, not, I mean, the nutrients are very important, but that's what your body uses. It's like the raw materials. It's not like you're taking a pill and it's curing your issue. It's your body's doing the curing process. It's the healing process. We don't know how it does it. I mean, Dr. Wallach doesn't even know how the body heals itself. We just know that these things are needed for it, and we got to be able to absorb them and whatever. But I want to know, when did you find out about Dr. Wallach, like on the timeline here?
That would have been 2013. It would have been late 2013, around September, October.
So it was during your like search too.
hmm Yeah, and then it was really cool. Um, I got connected with Doug. I don't know. Do you know Doug?
No,
With
maybe.
I can't think of his last name right now off the top of my head, but anyways, he's been with Dr. Wallach for some time, like say early 2000. But I got connected with him, and then through him, was able to connect with Dr. Wallach and had several conversations with him, and he was super super helpful and being able to educate me and guide me in my journey. And so it was somebody that I have high level of respect for, and what the work that he's done, and what he continues to do and help people. So it's been a really interesting, now going on 10 years, of this health and wellness journey. And so I'm now just really, until my time here is done, I'm just dead set on sharing what I know to help others be able to live their best life, because I can't imagine. I know that people I was dealing with a lot of pain for like 6 months, just this tiny little time of 1 year. And it took me to the point where I was depressed, angry, sad, just, those emotions that we don't need to be, dealing with that on a day by day basis. And there's people that have been chronically ill for years, have been depressed, sad, angry, irritable because their body just can't catch up and can't catch a break. And unfortunately, we weren't educated properly. If what I know now, I knew in elementary school, I can't even begin to think about what I would have been able to achieve as an athlete because I
Really?
was able to do what I was able to do without all this knowledge. And now, you know, my mentor is somebody who has educated professional athletes like Tom Brady and has helped Tom Brady become one of the greatest football players of all time because he now, and for probably 15 years now, I'm sure Tom Brady has been applying the same type of knowledge that I was able to gather, to be able to take his performance just to a level that's just unbelievable, and other Olympic athletes. There's many, many, many athletes out there that have been able to take this type of understanding of the human body, biochemistry, and just how to maintain homeostasis in every function of the body and be able to support the body. I can't even imagine, and I have one of my little snippets of personal experience. So I told you that 2013 was my last, April 2013 was my retirement month as an athlete. Well, I continued coaching, and 2015 I was coaching the team. The team that I was on was a level 6 team. There's 7 levels in cheerleading. When I came back in 2015 to coach, I was coaching the level above the team that I was a member of. So it was a level 7 team. And I hadn't been training. Now I had continued to kind of maintain a little bit of my gymnastics and part of my coaching, in terms of the acrobatic side of it. I still continue to do that. And even to this day, like where I lift girls up and teach them how to fly and flip and twist and turn and all that stuff. And so I was noticing that as I continued to do that, like my body wouldn't hurt like it used to. I was stronger without being a consistent, training consistent to be competitive. My body was working more efficiently. But we were preparing for a national championship competition, and we were going to qualify for the world championships. And 2 days before we were leaving town to go compete, one of our athletes, he was actually, so this team based out of Dallas here. I live in Dallas, Texas. And
And I hate to
he was,
cut you off right now, but
no
you're
problem.
gonna get cut off from Zoom here in a second. Um,
Okay.
please hold that thought. Just I'm gonna stop the meeting and then I'll invite you right away.
All righty.
It's gonna convert the video, so it might take like a minute or two.
Okay.
Thank you. Sweet, we're back. Zoom is a little bit weird, but I hope you remember which part you were talking about.
So I wanted to share, I was mentioning that I couldn't imagine if I knew, you know, at the beginning of my competitive career, what I know now, what I would have been able to achieve. I know one thing, I would definitely have not experienced the amount of injuries, the amount of pain, soreness, fatigue, all those issues. I would have just enjoyed, the competitiveness a little bit more without having to experience all the pain. But so I had retired from competing. It was April of 2013, and I continued coaching. And then this was about January of 2015, so almost 2 years later. We were preparing for a qualification event for the World Championships, and one of our athletes, who was he lived in Oklahoma, so he would drive in to practice with us. And he told us on a Wednesday night, he's like, "Hey, I can't make it this weekend. Like, I have to be at a competition in another city with my teams." I didn't realize that was this weekend, and we were like, "Great." So we didn't, he's kind of an important part of our team. And so me and the other two coaches were like, "Well, yeah, we don't have anybody else that can do it but you." And I'm like, "All right, I'll have to see what happens." I mean, I know all of the pieces of what he does, and I just haven't been practicing or conditioning, in over 2 years now. So Friday night we get to Oklahoma, and we start practicing late at night. It was like 10 o'clock at night, and I just start practicing for the first time all the pieces and doing the routine, and I'll make it through and survive. And then Saturday morning comes and we go compete, and I've never felt more prepared for an event than I did in the previous 15 years that I competed. Like, my mental state was so much better. My physical state was so much better. And although I hadn't been conditioned for that routine, my body was just able to handle it so much easier. So competed on Saturday, did great. We had to go again on Sunday, competed on Sunday. Well, actually Saturday night, I was like, "Okay, well, I got to get ready. I got to recover," and, pulling out all the stops, every little thing that I could do. I was like hydrating my body, drinking my greens, taking a warm Epsom salt bath, using, you know, stretching therapies and things like that, and come back on Sunday feeling great again. We do our thing. We qualify for the championships, and it was just, to me, that was a true test that, here I am 2 years after retiring from a sport that is very taxing on the body. It's super intense. It's an anaerobic 2.5 minute intense, you know, physical fitness. And my body was able to get through it, and I was able to feel great. And so from that moment on, I was just like, all right, I've got to help my athletes understand the importance of taking care of their body and fueling their body properly, and hydrating properly, and learning all these recovery techniques to be able to, get back to practice, and be able to continue progressing and performing. So that was just one of my experiences after, I had not practiced or trained for that type of competitive situation. And I was able to do it with pretty, pretty easy. It was pretty easy. So um, it was really cool to be able to experience it for myself, because, I hadn't gone through this whole transformation until after I had retired from competing. So it definitely makes a huge difference in being able to not only be mentally capable of doing things, but also physically able to do things like that. So it's
I
pretty
want to
cool.
talk a little. I want to talk a little bit about recovery. It is an interesting thing with me. I don't know too much about it, and you do talk a lot about it. I want to know: is it? I mean, I know the 90 plays is just a role on just everything, but is
Hmm.
this going to be more of like a protein thing? Like you're eating? I feel like it's a lot more like being healthy and being physically fit are like two different things. Like you can be fit and have a lean looking body just by eating protein and working out. You don't really need nutrients to have that physique. But like for recovery itself, is there a lot more than just protein and nutrients?
Well, I'll just kind of give you a little a general thing about recovery. So the main thing for me and what I've learned is when you're physically fit or involved in exercising intensely, you're producing a lot of lactic acid. So that's been my main focus and understanding with recovery, and being able to just eliminate that acid quicker is what I've experienced as as an athlete and now a personal trainer who works out regularly and is doing intense type of exercise. is is just being able to minimize the lactic acid load on the body and being able to remove that lactic acid quickly before it starts to act as a meat tenderizer on your muscles and your ligaments and your tissues, because that's basically the number one enemy of any athlete or any just physical fitness in general. So um, minerals would be the number one um, opposite of that lactic acid. And then secondary to that would be the channels of elimination. So the breathing, the sweating, urination, defecation. So those four channels of elimination, and making sure that we're able to support those channels of elimination, and we're able to give the body the minerals that it needs to be able to replenish the minerals that are lost during sweat, and then be able to neutralize the lactic acid so that you're not sore. So anything that helps the blood circulate and percolate is, definitely the goal in terms of recovery. And obviously, when we sleep, sleep is our number one supporter of recovery, because our energy expenditure isn't divided out between all of our systems. It's basically we become paralyzed, so all of our muscles are off. And then we're able to focus all of our energy on moving the blood in and out, and being able to carry the waste through the blood out of respiration. And sometimes people sweat very profusely during sleep because their body's having to purge those toxins. And then some people wake up in the middle of the night to go pee because their bladder is full of toxins that they're trying to get rid of. So those are the ways that that our body removes that lactic acid. And if we can support that, then that's what I've found, that is just, it's like it's magic. Just the lactic acid's gone, I'm not going to be sore. So it's
I gotta
pretty
ask,
incredible.
yeah, that is sleep plays such a big role in circulation, like you're talking about. But like what is there like some exercises that produce more lactic acid in the body than other workouts?
So if you have anaerobic versus aerobic, you'll have a different you know level of lactic acid.
Could you define
So
those for me? Because I'm kind of new to that.
anaerobic is going to be without oxygen. So like high interval intensity training, where you don't have a break for your body to be able to catch your breath. That's going to be anaerobic. So it's going to require your cells to be able to transport oxygen without as much oxygen intake. And then aerobic would be more oxygen. So you're able to maintain, like, um, anaerobic would be more of like short, fast sprints. And then your aerobic would be longer, slower paced jog. And so when you're in that high intensity state without the break to where you're able to then recover that breath and slow down your breath, those two are going to be a different lactic acid load on your body. In terms of muscles, I don't really know some more specific muscles, but obviously our legs are stronger than the rest of our body because we walk around on our legs all day. So I would imagine that, the use of our legs, which our muscles are typically bigger, are going to create more lactic acid than our upper body. But nonetheless, it honestly it doesn't matter how much. All that matters is if you understand how to neutralize that acid. And if you have the right amount, it just becomes a numbers game. If you have the right amount of hydration with minerals, sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, then your body is going to be able to neutralize, because the body, just from what I've learned and the research I've done, is that the body will neutralize acids at a 20-to-1 ratio. So 20 parts of alkaline minerals, sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, to neutralize 1 carbonic acid. And that's where the, the challenge comes in for athletes to be able to be at a threshold where their body's able to neutralize that lactic acid almost as it's being produced. And that's personally where I am at in my understanding of, physically putting myself through different, physical strenuous exercises or workouts or running, that I'm consuming a certain amount of alkaline water, fluids, minerals, that as I am producing lactic acid and the proper ways to breathe so that you're also able through breath to neutralize lactic acid, that it's literally being neutralized as it's happening. So I don't get sore after intense workouts where, most people will, have that delayed onset muscle soreness, a day or two later,
That's
and
me.
then they'll be sore for 2 or 3 days. Like I remember that as an athlete. Oh yes. Oh, I definitely remember that. And when we would have summer camp, we would train for 3 or 4 days before we would leave to go to college camp. And then college camp would be 3 days of intense workout. And I mean, I would just be sore before we left town to go to camp. And then camp was just like a miserable thing because we would just be sore, working out, still sore, working out. Like it was just like an impossible to recover in
Boot
that
camp.
small amount of time. Yeah, oh yeah, it was Nazi boot camp. Like our coach was intense. And like I said, had I known what I know now, it would have been a different ball game. So in terms of that, but it all works for anybody who has human blood and in any scenario. So if you are a librarian and you want to be able to have a clear mind while you sit there at your desk and put books in a shelf and do on your computer, you know what I'm saying? Like you have human blood, the same thing works for you as it works for Tom Brady, and Usain Bolt, Olympic sprinter, Michael Phelps, Olympic, swimmer. So it's all about the blood and, like you say, the nutrients, because the blood carries the nutrients to the body in the certain areas of the body, and the blood carries the oxygen, and then the blood picks up the carbon dioxide and the lactic acid and removes it from the body. So if you're able to focus on higher quality and higher quantity of blood, and support that, the cardiovascular system, then you're going to be healthy. Or if you're an athlete, you're going to experience better performance and better recovery.
Right. I definitely want to know a little bit more about how I can just recover myself. I know you have a lot of breathing techniques and um because that's a lot of what you post is like the inhale for 2 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds. That was really interesting to me. Um and it plays a really critical role because you were getting into to sleep and that our body is regenerating when it's not using the muscles. It's something like that paralyzed type of state. That's a cool way to describe it. Um, but you're literally like that. That's like one of our. I feel like it's one of the most consistent waste ways that we get expelled. Waste. It's like the
Right.
main thing, and like big topic of today is just putting a face mask on that, like going into with this whole COVID thing coming around. Well, you're covering up the thing that's expelling the waste all the time, and you're just breathing in the lung poop and whatever. But I feel like that's
Kind
done
of.
a very huge toll on people. I mean, I have friends that are in the military. One was he's doing a intensive. What is he doing? He's in the honor guard, and he's flipping rifles. I mean, getting injured and doing all this stuff with a mask on. I'm like, what? I'm like, that was me. I just can't. It would be difficult. I would imagine recovery in that situation would be much more difficult. But how's breathing impacted the way you? How does this impact the way you get rid of this lactic acid? Like,
So one thing that I've learned that's just amazing when it comes to breathing. I'm excited to share this with you because and your viewers, because it literally it changes so much. There's so much, and I wish I would have known this sooner. I mean, I knew about breathing techniques back in about 2004, and I would apply them, but it was only like I only had like half the puzzle, and so it was helpful, but it wasn't what I know now. And this just was just maybe within the last year and a half, like that I've learned this. But no, actually, it's been longer because it was right before COVID. And I remember when COVID was happening, I was trying to explain to people this very thing. So, very interesting fact. The amount of carbon dioxide that we have in our lungs at any given time will always equal the amount of carbon dioxide in our blood vessels. It's there's no way physiologically to change that. That is just an innate fact about the human body. So what does that mean? So carbon dioxide, we know, is a waste product, right? It's a waste product of cellular respiration as well. So through ATP, we produce carbon dioxide, right? And then the carbon dioxide is further broken down into water or into another like pyruvate molecule. So as we our cells are respirating that carbon dioxide, and our lungs are also expelling the carbon dioxide. Um, it's also very interesting that carbon dioxide is a signaling molecule for our hemoglobin to release oxygen. So the hemoglobin comes from the heart into the bottom part of our lungs, and that's where the hemoglobin attaches to the oxygen that we breathe. And then from there, it gets pumped back into our heart, and then it gets pumped through the rest of our body. So the hemoglobin is carrying that oxygen through our blood vessels. And in the presence of carbon dioxide, because they're opposites, okay? So opposites attract, just like when you take the north end of a magnet and the south end of a magnet. They come together. But you take the north and the north, and they repel each other. And this is very important when we're talking cardiovascular system, because our red blood cells should have a healthy red blood cell, which would be even in shape, even in size, almost perfectly round, and even in color as well, should have a negative charge on the inside of the cell and a positive charge on the outside. So it's literally a battery, and we are technically a battery. You know, a battery is an enclosed environment with many cells. So our blood cells are literally the same thing, each individual cell, and it has a negative millivolt charge. So if you have a healthy red blood cell and another healthy red blood cell, they're never going to stick together. They're always going to be repelling each other and able to
Hmm.
flow through our cardiovascular system. Now, in the presence of carbon dioxide, because the opposite of oxygen is carbon dioxide, right? We breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. When that red blood cell is carrying that oxygen and there's a carbon dioxide molecule nearby, it's going to release its oxygen. And because they're opposites, and it's going to then release that oxygen into the bloodstream and into the tissues and the muscles. So this is what I was trying to explain to people back in 2019 when they were trying to cover their mouths with diapers, you know, filthy cloths that prevents oxygen from coming in. And then also when you're breathing out carbon dioxide, you're keeping that carbon dioxide up in here in this nasal cavity. But if you are able to hold on to your carbon dioxide, okay, carbon dioxide's a gas, so it acts as a vasodilator in your blood vessels. So when you hyperventilate, you're expiring lots of carbon dioxide. So if I'm breathing out of my mouth, remember, I'm eliminating more from my lungs. So what's happening? More from my blood vessels are it's being expelled, and then that would narrow the blood vessels and cause the heart rate and blood pressure to go up. But when you're able to inhale more oxygen, which breathing through the nose allows our that air to be pressurized and pushed into the lower part of our lungs, where we would then pick up 20% more, at least 20% more oxygen. Then you slow down your exhale, you hold on to more carbon dioxide, you inhale through your nose, you absorb more oxygen, and then your blood vessels retain more carbon dioxide. So your blood vessels stay open. And then now you have more hemoglobin that's carrying more oxygen. And then you have a good balance of delivery of oxygen through a wider space, which would be a lower heart rate and a lower blood pressure. And that would deliver more oxygen to your muscles. So that if you're trying to be physically active, or you just want to sleep better and recover more, um, that's how it works. So the amount of carbon dioxide in the lungs equals the amount of carbon dioxide in the blood vessels. So if you're hyperventilating and you're releasing too much carbon dioxide, you're going to have a higher heart rate and a higher pressure, higher blood pressure. So
Okay. And that was really
slow.
interesting. Really, really interesting. I don't really know too much about hemoglobin itself. I want you to explain what I know it like carries the oxygen around, but I'm really new into nutrition, even being a year and a half deep into it.
Yeah, of course. So our red blood cell, the hemoglobin, um, is, its primary job is to carry and deliver oxygen. Um, so having the nutrients, the proper elements that require the formation of that blood cell. So you need water, you need salts, and you have 12 different types of cell salts, which are all sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, different combinations of that. Um, And then because the sodium's the most electrical ion on the planet, the most conducive one. So we're a body of salt water, just like the ocean is salt water. We are basically the earth encapsulated in this little meat suit. And and that's why we need sodium just as much as we need oxygen. Because without sodium, we would die just as fast as we without oxygen. So so when you have the right elements to come together to be able to form that red blood cell, and then you would need also the healthy fats, so the omegas, to be able to build the membrane of that blood cell. And then, like I said, the sodium gives it the charge. The water, obviously, blood is 87 or so percent water, and then it will then be able to be a good structure that can then absorb the oxygen into its core, and then be able to carry that oxygen through our cardiovascular system. So,
It
but
makes
carbon
like,
dioxide isn't as bad of a thing as I once at one point in time thought. It's actually very, very useful to be able to use it to our advantage.
yeah, it's if you didn't have the opposite, what would oxygen be? What would oxygen wouldn't really have too much of a it couldn't really work around properly if you didn't have carbon dioxide. And
Exactly.
no, it's really interesting. So the cell, I know the sodium is the main electrolyte of the body, and we're like a literal electrical being. I mean, without light, we wouldn't exist. Like we wouldn't we run off electricity. If you look at our electrical system in our body or nervous system, I mean, it looks like a tree. It looks like a bolt of electricity, you know, which is really
Right.
interesting. Like the entire world just it circulates around it. Every time I look at a tree, I figure it to be kind of like symbiotic so much with us. I mean, if you look at the inside of a lung, it looks like a tree.
Right.
We share that direct relationship with the earth, and if you're not connected that way, you can be disassociated with so many things and run through so many different health problems, and just having that disconnection alone has caused so much suffering in this world. And the whole salt thing particularly has changed my life so drastically. Before I had initially done the salt flush, it was Ryan from Alex Warriors that had originally made the salt flush, where you take 3 heaping tablespoons and put it into probably this size of glass of water, average looking jar. Keep it to the same medium. But the first time I've ever done it felt like a veil has been unleashed from my eyes, and I can actually see. I can actually be focusing in the world and actually participate. And it felt that it's just the first time I could actually focus and read. And I was so enhanced just by that one experience. I was on the 90 for a while, and I started doing the self flush because I neglected it a little bit. And it just like, it gave me just a whoosh, just a really great moment. And I can definitely tell, like, now that you're saying how salt is that electrolyte that pretty much gives the cell the proper charge, and so that they're not sticking to each other and they're repelling each other. That's what I'd imagine, right? If you don't have enough salt, your cells will just like stick together and stuff like that. So I feel like that's the exact feeling that I had. I just felt really lethargic and really gooey. It's hard to explain, but
It also, so the sodium ion is also the vehicle that carries every other nutrient through the body. So you get a vitamin A molecule, piggybacks a sodium molecule, and it sends it over into the red blood cells. and then the red blood cells carry it to the muscles, ligaments, tissues, bone. That's the other thing that was very, oh, like a wide awakening realization that, um, and this is information that I learned from a very well-known and respected doctor who's been doing research on the blood for over 40 years, Dr. Robert Young. And he put it to a very simple understanding that when we were created, um, at the point of conception, so when the sperm fertilized the egg, there became one drop of blood. And that one drop of blood began at the core of our body, so the umbilical cord. And so then that one red drop of blood became 2, 4, 8, and just began to double and create from the egg the connection of the umbilical cord, and then working in opposites, right? So to attach to the wall of the uterus, and then to begin creating us from our belly button and from the center outwards. And so the intestines is the primary, like, site of creation of where we came from. So that is the site of the red blood cell, is in our small intestine. The crypts of the small intestines is where the primary production of red blood cells. Now, this is information that I've researched for years, and Western medicine claims that it's the bone marrow, and there doesn't exist a lie which doesn't contain some form of truth. So I will vouch that they're right in the terms of red blood can be made in the bone marrow, and that this is the time that it's made in the bone marrow. You ready? When the body doesn't have the nutrients that it needs to produce the red blood cells in the small intestine, and the body goes into preservation mode, meaning it's basically body wasting, because the body will go to the end of the earth to maintain its delicate pH balance in the blood at a 7.36 to 7.45. So when you don't give your body the nutrients, the water, the salt that it needs, guess what? It's going to go rob it the calcium from your bones, magnesium from your muscles, sodium and potassium from the body fluids. And so that at that point, if your body is going into starvation mode, then yeah, your bones will literally degenerate, right, to regenerate. And so yeah, you want to have it that way, okay, then yeah, blood can be made in the bone marrows. However, we don't, like, where's our digestive system directly connected to our bones? What would be the point of eating food if our blood is made in the bone marrow? That's a question that I have, right? Like,
Yeah,
we're
it's
eating
really
food and it's going in this from our mouth to our anus is an external organ that's inside of us. But the matter that goes in that canal and in our stomach, into our small intestines, to our large intestines, and then back out, that doesn't become us until it passes through that small, again, it's about 9 inches or so, the duodenum in the small intestine. And then all the nutrients are through the crypts of the small intestine, get pushed into the body, and then they become the new blood. Well, like I was saying before, one drop of blood began our formation. So the blood became the bones, the skin, the hair, the teeth, the muscles, the tissues, the organs. Like, everything is made from the blood cell. And every 120 days, we have new blood in our body. Like 121 days from now, you and I will be here without one drop of blood that was in our body 120 days ago, because it's constantly at about 2 to 5 million red blood cells per second is being produced in the small intestines. And then that blood goes to regenerate the liver. Like every 90 days, your body produces a new liver. So imagine if the blood's coming from the bones, it doesn't make any sense that your bone, like my bones weigh like 6.8 pounds. Like 6.8 pounds is going to regenerate like from what? Like matter can't be created and it can't be destroyed. So if it's coming from the bones, that means that something's feeding it. So I'm maintaining 6.8 pounds of bone, but yet my bones are creating this 2 to 5 million red blood cells per second to then regenerate all my organs and my skin and my hair. And, so when I learned that and then I actually put it to the test, it makes perfect sense because I was able to regenerate my entire intestinal tract and heal injuries that I had for 15 years and aches and pains and joint pains. And, now like my body doesn't need to sleep more than 6 hours. And I could count on one hand how many times I've been tired in the last 10 years. And that was like, I know why I was tired. I mean, I like physically pushed my body beyond its limits. And, I didn't have as much water as I typically do. And, there was other circumstances that I understand why my body got tired. But other than that, it just doesn't happen. So it's all about the blood.
That's a really interesting.
We
I've
can,
never actually heard about the whole red blood cells being produced in the small intestine. First time hearing about this because I'm obviously going to want to get into it. And how you mentioned how when you don't get enough calcium in supplementary calcium or through the diet, it's an essential nutrient. We can't just make our own calcium. We can't produce our own calcium, so we need to eat it and then consume it some way. And if you don't get enough of it, the body enacts a hormone to actually steal it from your bones, and this is the cause of bone spurs and all these. I forget what it's called, but that one condition where,
osteoporosis.
yeah, osteoporosis, and where your spine literally fuses into each other and creates a
Oh,
bad posture.
calcified. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, just all these different types of calcification. I've seen a problem where somebody has calcium deposits in their testicles. I'm like, this is a this is to me that type of problem is just the body having a bunch of calcium in the excess. I'm kind of new to that, but like calcification of the pineal gland, for example, or the tissue part that doesn't get under. I don't really understand that, but like the bones, the bones aren't getting enough of the nutrients. They're going to start, yeah, the body starts stealing from the bones and starts pulling nutrients and stuff out of that. And that makes sense because most Americans, I feel like I'm reading epigenetics right now, and I read a study that it said about 95% Americans are minerally deficient. So all of these studies on human beings are studies on people that are minerally deficient, and all those studies of where does the blood get birthed from? It's from the bones. Well, no, these people are minerally deficient. I'm really curious to see what that is like in animals, because in animals we have the full control. Ever since birth, we've give them full uh, nutrition for proper conception, and we have perfect births every time. We're back. I got cut off randomly. But yeah, I was talking about how, yeah, it's really a new concept how the bones, like I've always been taught it's always the bones that have been making the all the blood cells and everything, but yeah, it does there are a lot of the bones in the body to actually produce that, and so some similar way. I forgive the Western medicine part, but I want to know more about this. I want to know more about how, because I know the intestines. I mean, they're I basically know they're just the main nutrient absorbing organ in the body, and if you don't break down your food properly in the stomach, if you don't have enough stomach acid, another really critical part of salt in the body. If doctors saying to limit salt is criminal advice. Uh, if we don't have enough of that
Absolutely.
salt, if we don't have enough of that salt, literally everything that we're eating is just inflaming that intestines and wrecking that ability to absorb nutrients and stuff. So they don't just absorb nutrients; they produce red blood cells. I want to know more about this process.
So here's another, what I like to call half truth on behalf of the Western medicine. And I've I've made a video showing that our saliva produces a chemical compound that is a very common household item, baking soda, also known as sodium bicarbonate. So the saliva is composed of water, sodium, and carbon dioxide. And that is a chemical compound, sodium bicarbonate. And what I learned is that, because I used to, believe that stomach acid is what breaks down food, but let me just bring a few things to mind that just make us kind of go, So, have you ever eaten corn before?
Yeah, does not look brown when it comes out.
It looks just like corn when it comes out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, now let's think about this. A a piece of beef, right? Let's just say it's a little 1 inch by 1 inch square. What's harder to chew until it becomes liquid or just mush? A piece of corn or a piece of beef?
Yeah, the beef is much easier because, like, the am I wrong here?
Now this not I mean the skin, right? The skin of the corn might be hard to break through, but if you just bite a tiny piece of corn, like the inside of the corn, like 90% of the corn, it just becomes water because it's fruits and vegetables are pretty much 80-90% water. So it's easier to mush and masticate a tiny little piece of corn. I'm not talking like uncooked corn. I'm talking like corn on the cob, corn off the cob, whatever,
Well,
corn
I
out
guess
of a
I
can.
yeah, I guess I'm
So
thinking
if the
about like
little
beef
piece of
from
corn, and yeah, obviously, you're probably eating too fast, not chewing the food well enough, and a tiny little piece of corn, you swallowed it almost whole, and it came out whole, right? If you swallow a peanut comes out a peanut. Now, the inside of our mouth, right there, is not as delicate as the lining of our stomach. The lining of our stomach is much more delicate than the inside of your mouth, but you know how easily you could, I mean, if you've had alcohol before and you take a shot of alcohol in your mouth and that burns your mouth, or even, mouthwash. There's certain mouthwashes that, will feel like it burns your inside of your mouth. And so to think about hydrochloric acid, which has a pH of 1.5 to 2, right? And obviously, when people have experienced vomiting, when that acid comes back out and it's just like burning your throat, burning your mouth, It's not a very pleasant feeling or taste. But so this was my thought. I'm like, if hydrochloric acid has a pH of 1 to 1.5 or 1 to 2, and the lining of our stomach is very delicate, how come the pH of that fluid isn't burning through the lining of our stomach? If it has to break down foods, how come it doesn't like break down the lining of our stomach? That was just one of my thoughts. So through further research, this is what I learned, and now this makes sense. This is the other part of it, right? So the half truth is, yes, hydrochloric acid is in the stomach, and the stomach at a certain time becomes acidic. But how's the hydrochloric acid created to begin with? Well,
But
what I learned
yeah.
is that sodium bicarbonate is produced in the stomach to alkalize the foods and the drinks that we consume. So it starts in the mouth. The saliva, it has other what they call enzymes that are alkalizing the food. Okay. So it begins to begin that digestive process. But what happens, and this is what I've been doing research on and experimenting with my own self and other people that have had different issues, different diseases, different symptoms and sicknesses. And it works every time. But the stomach produces sodium bicarbonate. But for every molecule of sodium bicarbonate produced in the stomach, there will be an equal amount of hydrochloric acid.
Hmm.
Now, the sodium bicarbonate rises to meet the food and the drinks that we consume, but as a waste product, just like the engine of a car burns the fuel and out comes the carbon monoxide, the waste product out the back. Well, that's the hydrochloric acid is the waste product of sodium bicarbonate. It's its opposite, just like oxygen, carbon dioxide. So sodium bicarbonate is produced, one molecule. Hydrochloric acid is left over, one molecule. And on here in the lower left side of the stomach is the gastric pits. And because hydrochloric acid is molecularly heavy, it after the sodium bicarbonate has done its job to help raise the pH of the food that we eat, and the hydrochloric acid's left over, well, it sinks to the bottom into those gastric pits and is then absorbed back up into the body. And then the body, based on the different elements that are in there, it expels it through the lungs, through carbon dioxide, or it reuses it for other things because matter can't be destroyed. It's not just going to disappear. So that's what I learned and have been experiencing for the last 10 years. And so the pancreas does the same thing. The pancreas is like a squirt gun, squirting sodium bicarbonate into the small intestines to continue to raise the pH of the foods that we eat. Because ideally, it needs to be at a pH of 8.4, just like the ocean, in order for that to then become the red blood cell. And then another thing that I was going to touch up on earlier, but now it's just segued right into it. Our primary brain is in our gut. We have more brain cells in our gut than we do in our head. And this is our primary brain is our gut. Our secondary brain is our heart. And then our third brain is our brain in our head. And that's why we get gut feelings. That's why you can have a very powerful feeling in your gut in a situation, whether it be a good situation or a bad situation. Your body, there's so much energy here, there's so much blood being produced here that our body is able to pick up energy. And obviously our heart is an energy field that extends out into a 15-foot radius. So we have lots of cells, stem cells, red blood cells being produced in our gut. And then those cells then go up into the heart, then up into the brain, and then become the new brain cells and then the new body cells. And that's what I've been practicing and experiencing and helping people support that process to be able to reduce the acidity in the body, because Western medicine has come up with many different names for symptoms, right? But according to Dr. Robert Young, he says it very well, and it makes perfect sense. And I haven't found anything else that makes more sense than this. There's only one sickness and one disease, and that is the over acidification of our blood, then our tissues, and then that's due to an inverted way of living, eating, drinking, thinking, and believing, because our thoughts create acids. When we drink things, if it's acidic in nature, it will produce more acids in our body. When we eat things that are acidic, it produces more acids. And when we believe things, our feelings can also, and our emotions can also cause over acidity in our body. And then the acid then causes the symptoms that express themselves in different ways. And so one last thing that kind of ties this all together is he also explains the 7 stages of acidosis. So I'll put it this way before I go over those 7 stages. Our red blood cells, and our red blood has to be, as it's moving through our blood, our cardiovascular system, at a pH of 7.36 to 7.45, like small window, right? But that on a pH scale, 0 to 14, 7 is neutral. Everything above 7 is going to be base or alkaline, and everything below 7 is going to be acid. Well, our blood is slightly alkaline, and it will do that innately on its own. It will maintain that, but our blood is only 20% of our body fluids. So the other 80% of our body fluids is the extracellular, intracellular fluids, which is considered, I don't know if you know this, but it's just recently been accepted as the largest organ in the human body. And that's the interstitial fluids, the interstitium. And so that's all the extra fluids that are outside of the blood. So the blood cells are carrying the nutrients, carrying the oxygen through the cardiovascular system, maintaining a pH of 7.36 to 7.45. But then the waste is expelled outside of the blood stream into the interstitial fluids. And that's really where like the show is. Like if you want to really find, the, not going to say that word, the solution, okay? And this the solution to the pollution. Because when the body fluids become polluted, then we have sickness and disease. So if you want the opposite of sickness and disease, health, then you have to maintain the body fluids and support the body. So stage 1 of 7 stages, I'm tired. If you're tired throughout the day, your body's in stage 1 acidosis. It means that your body is unable to eliminate the acids that are being produced through, your lifestyle, your diet, your environment. Stage 2 is going to be skin sensitivities, irritations, or allergies. Stage 3 is going to be mucus buildup. So people that are constantly clearing their throat and their nose, and mucus buildup, that's stage 3 acidosis. Stage 4 is going to be inflammation. Um, Stage 5 is going to be cholesterol buildup in the arteries and the veins. Stage 6, where I was, ulcerations. So I was experiencing symptoms, severe ulcer in the gut, in the intestines. And then stage 7 is degeneration, where that's where they, have the names diabetes, lupus, heart disease, cancer, the list goes on. But it's all an expression of the chemistry of the body. So when the blood becomes over acid, it's going to then express itself outward. So it's not infection, like germs don't cause disease. Germs are a result of a specific lifestyle and diet. And so just like if you take food and we put food in the refrigerator to preserve the food, right? Because if you leave food out and you don't put it in the fridge or in the freezer, it's gonna, you know, it's gonna evolve. Like matter doesn't just disappear, it just continues to evolve. And so bacteria then becomes mold, then becomes fungus. And so, sorry, yeast and then fungus. So you have bacteria, mold, yeast, fungus. Those are the stages that cellular breakdown of food. So if you're doing the same thing inside your body and your cells are in an environment of low oxygen, because it all comes down to chemistry. So the pH needs to remain slightly alkaline. But if all of a sudden you have so much acid in your body, okay, and so on the pH scale, this is what people just don't understand. But once you understand this, then it makes so much sense. On the pH scale, right? 7 is neutral. So when you go below 7, all that means is low oxygen. Okay. And then if you go above 7, that means high oxygen. Or another way to look at it, because pH stands for potential of hydrogen. So you go below 7, that's going to be low hydrogen or proton rich. And you go above 7, it's going to be high hydrogen or electron rich,
How much
which is your
fluctuation are we talking
sodium.
about? Sorry to
And
interrupt. How much of a
in
fluctuation are we
turn,
talking about?
are you talking about the pH of the blood?
Yeah, yeah. Because I know it, like if it fluctuates too much, you could kill yourself. Like, well, you could die.
Right, right. So when the blood gets to 7.1, your body goes into a coma.
Yeah, so it's
So
very slight
it,
we're talking about. We're not talking about
right.
like it's gone from 11 pH down to 5 pH. It's like, yeah, just slightly. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just slightly. Say, 7.36, say you probably get to 7.33 and you're dealing with, cholesterol buildup in the arteries and the veins. And and also this this fluctuates, right? Because based on your day and your life and how much water you had that day or how many fluids or how much nutrients you did get through food and how much rest you got. And that's why, people go through the seasons of sickness, of flu, and those happens when the seasons change, when there's less sun, they're outside less. And then right after Thanksgiving, when they've just stuffed their body with all these simple carbs and sugars and all this food, and they're drinking all this alcohol, and their body's not able to eliminate the amount of acids that were produced. And then all of a sudden they have the flu. That's just the body responding to an over acidification, and it causes you to, all right, you need to take a break. I'm going to park you right here on this couch for the next day or two, and I'm going to give you you know, you're going to get a fever. So you can open up the pores of elimination and start to sweat these toxins out. And so the body has 4 ways of eliminating toxins. So we have the respiration, perspiration, urination, and defecation. And so if those channels aren't open and constantly flowing, then things get backed up. And that's where, you know, you see symptoms of over acidity. So if you're able to maintain those channels of elimination open and you're able to provide the body with obviously the 90 essential nutrients, the right foods, and stay away from the bad foods. So here's another cool way of understanding a lot of this. It's kind of like condense it all down to just simple. Matter is made up of molecules, right? Food. And those molecules are made up of smaller atoms. So if you have a electron rich atom, which is made up of neutrons, protons, and electrons, all right? If it has more electrons than protons, that matter on a pH scale is going to be alkaline or a base. So what is sodium? You know, sodium has an electron, sorry, 2 electrons on its outer ring to donate. So that's going to be alkaline or a base. And hydrogen as well. So depending on the concentration of that matter is going to determine what that matter turns into in our body. And so, you know, all the nutrients, all the vitamins, and all the minerals that it's like break it down to its basic fundamental. You got carbons, you got nitrogens, you got oxygens, you got phosphates. And so those pieces of matter that come together, you got to just understand that that matter is going to transform into other matter. So if you're able to have more matter that is electron rich, because we are electrical, then our body can then vibrate and be electrically charged, which then gives us more oxygen. And then that reduces the chances of our body becoming over acid or getting sick. So I haven't been sick in 10 years. There's 3
Really?
scenarios where I have experienced a symptom, but I know why. I know exactly what I did to cause that. So aside to those 3 times that my body experienced, because I learned through my healing process that I was very intolerant to gluten. You know, some people can handle it better than others. I absolutely, my body just does not handle it. So I had gluten on 3 different occasions. Sorry, 4 times, because 3 gluten scenarios and I had reactions. Okay, so that was a sickness. And then once was mercury poisoning, because I have a crown that I got back in early 2000, maybe 1 or 2, and I just found out about it a year ago that it has mercury in it. So about 2 years ago, I ended up causing mercury poisoning to my body. And then that's what led me to find out that I had mercury in my tooth. And so 4 times in the last 10 years where I have experienced some type of what you would call like sickness. And it was just, you know, it wasn't very long before I realized like, oh shoot, that had gluten in it. Like that's why I got these freaking rash under my armpits, and, you know, went to work and got my body back to basic, got it back to flushed all that out, and it, you know, it wasn't an issue. But besides that,
So you just stayed at
there's
one time.
no, what's that?
I'm sorry. You just ate at one time and it was just like bam.
Oh, yeah. hmm And
Wow.
even for 21 days, for up to 21 days, I was, you know, still a little bloated in my gut and was still just kind of like, you know, not feeling like 100% clear. But aside to that, There's, there's no, it's like the fishbowl metaphor, right? So you have a fish in a fishbowl, and if the fish gets sick, what would you do first? Would you give it medication or would you change the water?
Exactly. It's always a lot of people think about just nutrients and they don't really pay attention so much to the bad food advice. We give a lot of, I mean, that's half of our protocol. I mean, we expect so many. I mean, if you're to do one thing on our list, we would much rather have you just eliminate the bad foods than actually take all 90 essential nutrients. I mean, if you're not absorbing those nutrients, it's just kind of useless, and that whole practice kind of just
Right.
goes out the door. You're not. It's just like excess stuff. You're just like you said earlier, like the intestines and all of our digestion is like the contact with the outside world that's inside us. So we need to make sure that environment's really great. I mean, that's like there's a little literal black bacterial environment. And there's things to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just kind of like how if you rub poison ivy on your skin and you get contact dermatitis, same thing can happen on your internal skin, if you want to call it
It,
that.
right.
But if you eat, nobody's going to eat poison ivy, and nobody's going to test for a positive allergy when it comes to poison ivy. But I can guarantee you everybody's intolerant to it. Same thing applies with
Exactly.
gluten. Gluten can we say that everybody is on a scale of gluten intolerance. Some people are very intolerant. I was extremely intolerant to, and you were too. And some people can handle it
Mm-hmm.
pretty well, but they have like very, very minor symptoms. Maybe they have like brain fog or just something's very minor. Um, it's
And
really
I would,
interesting. Like the gut is the first brain, like the thing that was first developed too, which was really interesting. I connected that, and it was the first thing to develop, which means it's, in my opinion, a lot more important than what we like nootropics and all this stuff that's floating around, like alpha brain and all that stuff. Well, we got to be, if I have one little thing going on in my gut, just today, just from quitting coffee about a week ago, I'm getting these weird intestinal pains. As soon as I'm getting one of these pains, I'm in a different emotional state. It's with mindfulness and being paying attention to it, right? Mindfulness not being like spiritual and all this whatever land, just
mm-hmm.
just being aware of what's going on in my body and just kind of slowing down and taking a breather. It's helped drastically. But continuing this no coffee thing, I felt, for most people it's pretty okay, but a lot of people have gut problems, and if you did have IBS or you did have Crohn's or any type of intestinal problem, we're going to tell you to get off of it for a while. And I didn't listen to that advice when I originally got into it, so I wasn't drinking coffee at the time, but then I got back into it when I started going to church and stuff. They'd always make coffee, and leave I want a coffee. Well, I love coffee. It's just really, I mean, it gives you that boost of dopamine, nice morning, nice morning vibe or whatever. But I had to go, and when the first day I got rid of it, my head was just so much more clear. I can have a lot more fluent language. It's a huge thing I notice every single time my gut is just off by a smidge bit. I'm having just a little bit of pain, even. It's that heavily affected. I'm getting on this new product. It's called I-26. I don't know. I'm sure if you've heard about that, the I-26 egg powder from Longevity. And I was just hearing, I was listening to a Dr. Peter Glidden and interviewing Dr. Winkle is his name. Don't know his first name, but Winkle is saying that I-26 product eliminates all of it eliminates up to 26 different bad bacteria strains. And it's not just like, I always thought it was just like consume more probiotics and keep that intake up, and the prebiotics, postbiotics, all that stuff. Make sure they actually get to the colon. They're micro encapsulated, so all of them survive all the way down there. But I never really thought, we got to get rid of that bacteria too. And I've been starting this new product, and I'd have to say, when I'm starting any new digestion product, and I get this just, I get digestive symptoms anytime I change up anything about my diet or anything. And so I've been on it for probably 2 days consistently, and I have felt like, it's ever since I've been able to pay attention to my body that much more, I can tell it's in the large intestine. Like, no doubt, it's on the outer ends of. It's not in the inner part of my gut. It's on the outer, and I've learned that in the beginning of this whole nutrition thing, and Dr. Wallach, that your body actually heals the most important organs first when it's on that healing journey. When you eliminate the gluten, the source of inflammation, you add in all the nutrients, and this healing process kicks in. The small intestine is one of the most, I mean, important organs to, because it wants to absorb more and allocate that to other parts of your body. So if you have like a very minor symptom on maybe the outside of your skin or something, that's the result of the internal thing happening in the body. But it might take some time to relieve that problem. And this is just generally speaking, it's brain fog or
Mhm.
something that's like less secondary, or it's a less of a important organism compared to the intestines. It's going to take a bit of a longer time to heal that, because the body heals that most important part of the body first, and then it goes into these other realms. But really appreciate how you dived into a lot of this stuff. I mean, it's a really complicated thing to talk about, how biochemistry of cells, and it's so you cleared up a lot of the pH stuff for me. I was honestly just, how this world attracts to certain things. I feel like my knowledge just automatically was, you just attract to that part, like you just filled that up. And I'm obviously gonna rewind this and listen to you again, because it's a lot of information, but I got a ton of notes taken and all this stuff. But I want to have you on more. And we've went through a lot of stuff. We're getting up to on about 7 minutes right now, but I just kind of wanted to take this time to just wrap it up. And do you have any other things that you'd want to say, add and include into what you're talking about?
Well, I did want to mention one thing about how you were talking about the coffee, and then just kind of give you a little thing on that. I don't know if you know about coffee, some of the research that has been done, and they've learned that cancerous cells can live indefinitely in a cup of coffee
Hmm.
because it has a perfect pH for cancer. So anyone with cancer, if they test their urine or their saliva pH, they will measure below 6, usually around 5.5. And it just so happens that coffee has a pH of anywhere from 5 to 5.5, which means low oxygen environment, which is what cancerous cells thrive on. But then I wanted to tie that into how you were saying, like anytime I switch up my diet, I always feel, the gut. And so, yeah, absolutely. Like that microbiome in the gut, it has so many different types and forms of bacteria in our gut. So, switching our diet is going to then change, right? The different types of bacteria that are there, and that will then result in a different, effect, or because there's a cause and effect relationship with everything. So, just kind of wanted to tie that in together, because I know you're, going through that change, and then also, you were like the first day I felt like I was just like clear headed more. Well, drinking coffee, the caffeine, we know that it doesn't give us energy. It only blocks the receptor to our brain that where it gives our brain the information that our body is tired. And so you drink the caffeine, and the caffeine cuts off that receptor So the brain never gets the information from the body saying, hey, I'm tired. I need to tone down and maybe get ready for some sleep or something, and be able to rest. And so um, in that process, because obviously coffee has a pH of around 5.5, very acidic. You put that in your stomach, and then there's the primary brain reducing oxygen, and then that in turn reduces about 50% of oxygen delivery to the brain.
Yeah,
So
I recently
there's
learned too.
no reason
Yeah,
no reason why you experienced a clear head other than you just allowed your brain to get 50% more oxygen delivery. And it's very important. Oxygen is, an essential element for all of our functions. And so I appreciate you having me on in this discussion. It was awesome. I really enjoyed sharing what I know with you, and hearing from you, and being able to just, communicate our experiences and knowledge with each other. I think it's going to be helpful for people out there. So would be happy to do it again and go into some other topics of some other things and continue some dialogue.
well, certainly. Yeah, I just met you, and I can't. I'm really thankful. There's not too many people that'll hop on and show their face. I love the in-person experience. Feel like it just touches a lot more, and I'm definitely going to turn this into an audio as well. But yeah, I want to go into so many other things, and uh, I was gonna mention that cancer, like how you're talking about, survives in a more an acidic environment, and where there's less oxygen, and that's essentially what cancer is. It's a when your cells are starved or they're cut off of oxygen, and or they got too much toxicity in them. Those are the three main parts. Your cells like literally degenerate and go back into a more primal state, and they just want to just
Mm-hmm.
divide, and that's the only thing they do. And I just thought I'd add that.
That that would be the tie in to what we talked about earlier. That would be anaerobic. So the cancers thrive in the anaerobic environment, which is without oxygen. And that's where they duplicate themselves. And it's all based on the biochemistry. And like I said, the 80% of the body fluids, which is the interstitial fluids. And if we're able to provide more water, oxygen, salts, and nutrients, then those things, they don't have to exist. People don't have to die of those symptoms or diseases. It's
Yeah.
dis-ease.
Yeah.
That's this dash ease. All right. We should have an ease through our life until our last breath. And we should be able to live healthy until our last breath, whether it be 80, 90, 100, or beyond. So,
Yeah. It's You don't want to kill those cells. You want to nourish them. You don't want to poison them. You want to nourish, love them, and protect them. And I feel like a very good place to end this. Love your body. It's there's a lot of turmoil in the world. There's a lot of turmoil just everywhere. Take control of yourself. It's the only thing you have control over, really, when it comes down to it, the real world. And
absolutely.
it all ties in, and it starts very slow. So we're talking about a lot of things, eliminating stuff and taking these nutrients. If you just incorporate one of these things in your life, and start from there, and go on, that's wonderful. Any single day can take to change your life. And I'm very thankful you hopped on here to shed light on a lot of the complicated sides of how this chemistry works. So I really appreciate you. And I'll definitely see you in the future. I hope really soon.
Absolutely.